All right, we are live. We are live. What's up, everyone? This is Boxingwave. Shout out to everyone that's in the comments already, man. Shout out to Young Hog TX, Jihad Af, Afro-Rican. Okay, Afro-Rican. What's up, man? Aaron, what's good with you? Corrales USA, Chance, Philly Trees, Saga, Keith, what's up? What's up, everyone in the chat? Please hit the thumbs up if you haven't already. On your way in, hit the thumbs up. All right, share the video if you can. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, you're bugging. All right, you guys see the title. Floyd Mayweather against Terrence Bud Crawford. Prime for prime. You know, wherever you consider the prime, there is no real wrong or right answer here, because both of these guys are from two different generations. You know, both of these guys are different ages and stuff. It's just the time is never gonna happen. Okay, the fight is never gonna happen. So there's no real like wrong or right answer. People have asked me this question throughout lives over the last few years. All right. And I'll give you answers throughout like certain lives and stuff like that. But I never really went into depth about these two. I think it's time. I think Crawford has accomplished more than enough. I think he's accomplished more than enough in his career to make a fair comparison. And I always thought that whatever weight division you're at, I think if you're considered to be one of a generational great, you know, I think it's the comparisons of fighters are fair. Like if you're the top guy or the top two or three guys in a certain generation, a certain weight class or multiple weight classes or whatever, I think it's fair to compare that top guy versus a guy from a certain generation from the past. You know, so I always think it's fair as long as you give a constructive, you know, breakdown or analysis of how you think it's going to go. Obviously, they're never going to fight. We would never know. Okay, there's no really right or wrong answer again. But I want to give my analysis of it first, just the intro. Then I'm going to open, you know, the chat, and I would like for people to join in. Keep it respectful like we always do. You know, keep it short. Don't be overly long-winded. But I would like to hear the opinions of some of you guys that's going to join up in a few. All right. But the reason why I'm making this video tonight is simply because Michael Benson on Twitter, you know, I'm sure if you're on Twitter or if you're on X, a lot of us follow him because of boxing news. You know, he likes to report a lot of news very, very early. And I think he's a reliable source. So he randomly posted a tweet today saying, or earlier this evening saying, you know, who would be the better fighter if they were to fight prime for prime. And I said, you know what? I got time for tonight to address this. And I think it would be fun to talk about it now, simply because I think the timing is perfect. Obviously, Bud has not finished his career. You know, he's going into his fourth division now, and he's looking to win a title in his fourth division. Okay, so there's still room to have this discussion later on, like when Crawford finishes his career. I think he is at the tail end of his career, and I don't think there's much more for him to accomplish. But he is a first ballot Hall of Famer already. Terrence Crawford is a 3-division champion. He is a 2-division undisputed champion, and he's a 3-division lineal champion. With that being said, Floyd Mayweather has never been undisputed before, but Floyd Mayweather is, you know, obviously he's been in there with the bigger names, the better fighters throughout his career. In my opinion, he has been unified in believe 2 divisions, 147 and 154, but he's been a lineal champion in 3 of those 5 divisions that he's won titles in. Floyd started at a lower weight at 130, and he's naturally, you know, barely the smaller guy between the two. Both of these fighters have a lot of respect for each other. You know, Floyd has gone on record and said multiple times for years now that Terrence Crawford is the best fighter in boxing. He has said this for at least, I've heard him say it for at least 5, 6 years, maybe longer now, that he's the best fighter. He believed that he's the best fighter. Again, Terrence Crawford is not a fighter that's been signed or been promoted by Floyd Mayweather. He has no reason to go out and say this. It's not like he's just gassing him up. He said that, and I believe he means it, And I just think that this is a great comparison. And I think it's a very difficult comparison. It's going to be, there's a lot of points you can bring up from the beginning, and I just think just talking about where exactly is Floyd's prime is a whole nother conversation. I think I made a video on Floyd in the different times in his career, a breakdown of that years ago. I have a video. It should still be up if you look it up. I'm sure there's a video that you'll find of me breaking down Floyd and his career completely, and even some of his toughest fights. And I've even made videos on fights that I wanted from Floyd that we didn't get. So those videos are always going to be up. Terrence Crawford, obviously I have a bunch of videos on him too, but not deep in-depth videos of Crawford, more like breakdowns for fights that were, on the way, that was coming up. All right. Shout out to everyone that's joined us. Please smash the like button. What's up, Gio? I see you. I see you in there, Rocket. Shout out to everyone, Pepino. All right, I'm not gonna get through all. What's up, nerd? I see you. Juice was good. Saga analysis. Everyone that's here, shout out to all you, Ren Martin. I'm not gonna be able to get through every one of you. You guys can debate and argue now as I speak. But let's start out with Floyd Mayweather. Okay. Floyd, who's still involved in exhibitions, but Floyd started at 130. He won his first title at 130, moved up to 135. He won a title there as well. Took a pit stop at 140, had a few fights there, and finished majority of his career at 147. Yes, he went up to 154 for Canelo. For Cotto, I believe at 154, had a few fights up there, but it stopped at 154. Okay. I wish he had went to 160. I believe he could have won a title at 162. There was a time where I was making content, and I said to you guys, I wish Floyd went up to 160 and fought Sergio Martinez when Sergio was the best guy at 160. I know, even though Gennady Golovkin was around at the time, but 160, after Bernard Hopkins moved up, and there was a period where I thought Sergio Martinez was probably the top guy there. And I wish Floyd took that chance, but he didn't. All right, but that's Floyd. Floyd, megastar, probably the top earning boxer of all time. Mega fights. He has, and I think the main point, the key point of Floyd is there's two versions of him. All right, and this is the debate where we say prime. Like, what does prime mean? Prime means when the fighter, it was at his absolute best. But because Floyd was a different version of himself at a different time and a later time in his career, it doesn't necessarily completely mean that he was better or worse. A lot of fighters, when they're in their prime, we're thinking about when they're younger, sharper, quicker, more action, getting knockouts and stuff, which Floyd was. Money Mayweather was that guy, at 130, 135. He was much more dangerous at 130 and 135. Thank you, E-Class, for the birthday shout outs. I see a couple of your comments as I'm speaking, but one, Floyd Mayweather, when a lot of us think of Floyd, and a lot of us that was watching Floyd for a long time, we think of Money Mayweather, the version of Floyd where he was a great defender, but he was more action-packed. A lot of us brought up Floyd recently when comparing him to Shakur Stevenson, all the criticism that Shakur has gotten, but all the praise he's gotten off his career, off of his defense. You got to remember, he was never like Floyd. There was never a version of Shakur that was like Floyd Mayweather as Money May. I'll compare Shakur more like, I'm sorry, Pretty Boy. I compare Shakur more like Money May instead of Pretty Boy. Pretty Boy Floyd was the guy that was stopping fighters, looking to stop and destroying fighters from 130 to even a little bit at 140 as well. I think at 147 there was a huge change, and that change had to do with a few things. It's not like Floyd didn't have the abilities that he had in those younger divisions. It's just that mentally he was smarter, he was a little bit more seasoned, matured, but it was because of, probably because of the weight jump. He was fighting bigger guys, harder to stop bigger guys, and also because the hand injuries. I think people tend to forget the reason why Floyd wasn't really knocking guys out like that is because of his brittle hands. Very easy for him to have injuries. I think the Hernandez fight, remember that fight where he injured his hand in that fight. Um, and then other fights after that, he did have injuries throughout his career with the hand injuries and stuff like that. So Floyd Mayweather, started to transform into Money May. And Money May came basically after the Oscar De La Hoya fight, where he became the big fighter. You got to remember, too, Floyd Mayweather was already considered pound for pound before 147. So I know people just remember him uh being the superstar and being the pound for pound fighter, mixed with Manny Pacquiao being in the mix. I think Andre Ward was in the mix at one point. There were different fighters through the years that were also considered to be pound for pound while Floyd was fighting. But Floyd was already considered pound for pound earlier than that. When he was out at 135, he was uh especially when he beat Chico, you know what I mean? He was already considered to be a pound for pound fighter around that time, especially after Roy Jones had lost to Antonio Tarver. You also had Shane Mosley there too. Shane Mosley was also considered pound for pound at that time too. So I can't remember exactly what year. This video is not about that, but people got to understand, before Floyd became a mainstream attraction and he was making the millions that he was making after fighting and beating Oscar De La Hoya, Floyd was already considered pound for pound number one, or in the discussion of 1 through 3, at 140, even at 135. So you got to remember that he was already that at that time. Okay. And he kept being that throughout the rest of his career. All right. So there's a difference in their careers. Like, Bud started at 135, but Bud didn't really get that big. Obviously, he wasn't famous like Floyd because he just wasn't a big talker. Floyd, he was kind of low key. And at that time, when Bud was having his success, Adrian Broner at 135, who was there at the same time, was bigger because there was a lot more comparisons with Broner and Floyd Mayweather, especially with the styles, the jewelry, the flashiness. Adrian Broner was leading to be the next Floyd Mayweather to a lot of people in his eyes. I never thought Broner was as good as Floyd, or you know what I mean? But at that time, Broner was the bigger prospect. He was the bigger name at that time, around 135. And we'll talk more deeply about that later in this video. All right. But I just want to give you an introduction of Floyd Mayweather and how he got to where he got. Now, after being De La Hoya, that's when the money fight started to come. He was already at 150. Oh, he fought Oscar at 154. I forgot about that. All right. So that was his first fight at 154. But, he was a 147 fighter. And then he started fighting the big names like Hatton, Marquez, Shane Mosley, yada, 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 Miguel Cotto, and all the way down the list. Eventually fighting Manny Pacquiao and then retiring after Andre Berto. Came back, fought Conor McGregor, but we don't need to discuss that fight for obvious reasons. All right, so that was Floyd Mayweather in his career in a nutshell. Obviously, there's a lot more to discuss, styles and stuff. We'll get to that. But just as far as accolades, just want to give you an introduction to Floyd and his career and his big fights and how he got to where he is today. Now, Crawford, again, different story. Crawford was at 135 for some time. Okay. Not really fighting the big names. He was on, he's on, and let me start about saying, I don't believe that Crawford had two different versions of himself. Crawford was always that same fighter. If you look at his fights, even prior to the what's his name, Breeders' Prescott, which is the first fight, the first real opportunity that he got where he moved up for that one fight to fight Breeders' Prescott. You know, at the time, Prescott was well known for knocking out Amir Khan in one round. Amir Khan was undefeated at that time when he knocked him out. So he had took that chance of moving up to 140 for that one fight last minute and basically clearing him out, like beating him every round. But if you look at those fights and the fights before that, when he had the dreads, and even after that, he always fought the same way. I think the version of Crawford that we see today is still the same version he was back then. I think there's subtle differences in his in the way that he fights. And I'll break more of that down when we get to the styles part of it. But I think for the majority, I think he's closer to what he was back at 135, now that he's at 154, than Floyd. I think there's a big difference in between Floyd, early Floyd, Pretty Boy Floyd versus Money May, and Crawford back at 135 up into now. I think there's subtle differences, but there's no real major differences in Crawford in the way that he fights. He switched back then, he switches now. He moves the same way. He's as technical and as textbook as he was back then. So I think that there's not major differences. But again, with Crawford at 135, that Breeders' Prescott fight really gave him a name at that time, and then he was a person that people were paying attention to. But at 135, I don't believe his first championship fight for a major title was against Ricky Burns, in which he became lineal champion. All right, we know he fought Yuriorkis Gamboa as well. He fought Ray Beltran at 135 as well. And then he eventually moved up to fight Tomas Delorme, and that's when he began his undisputed run at 140, and then eventually going to 147, which he's been for the last, I don't know, amount of years, maybe about 6 years or so now, fighting at 147, and now he's moving up to 154. Now, there's a key difference here between the two, because obviously Crawford became undisputed at 140. He didn't unify at 135, but neither did Floyd. I don't believe Floyd did at 135 or 130. He became champion, and I think he became lineal champion at those weights at 135 and 130. Crawford moved to 140, became undisputed, fought the best of the best at the division, and then went up to 147 and pretty much did the same thing. Now, as far as resumes, I believe Floyd Mayweather fought the better fighters throughout his career. I think before we get into comparing styles and who's better overall, I personally believe that 135 Floyd, 135, 140 at this time, he was fighting the better fighters, and I think that has a lot to do with timing. It has nothing to do with ducking who or nothing like that. I just think that the crop of fighters that was at 135 was just a little better. You know what I mean? I just think in being Diego Corrales, being Castillo, I have the list up here because I don't want to forget any names, but Corrales, Castillo, DeMarcus Corley, those were tough fights, tough fights. So even though Floyd didn't become undisputed in some of these divisions, you got to understand that the quality of the fights were a little bit better. And, I just think that when Crawford got to 140, he had just missed out on a very, I think, a little bit more competitive group of fighters at 140. Floyd left, and then the Tim Bradleys became the Kendall Holtz and the Devin Alexanders and all of those guys came at 140. That group, Amir Khan, that group came after Floyd. All right. And then after that group, what did we get? We had the Lucas Matisses, we had the Danny Garcias, we had all of those guys, Lamont Petersons, all really, really, really good fighters, right? So those guys moved up to 147, and then Crawford was at 130. I mean, went to 140, and then he started fighting the fighters he fought. Good fighters, very good fighters. And this is not to take anything away from Crawford, but the timing, in my opinion, wasn't the greatest because Crawford got there at a time. Victor Postal thought it was very underrated. I think he is very good, but he was probably the best fighter there at 140 at the time outside of Terrence Crawford. Thomas Delorme was a very good fighter. Deary John was decent. Hank Lundy was still good. I mean, these are good fighters. Felix Diaz was very underrated, good. But, I mean, these were very, very good fighters. This guy, hey, I already see someone trolling. Do you know how good DeMarcus Corley was? Whatever way you say your name. Do you know how good DeMarcus Corley was when Floyd fought him? 35 losses now, 2 losses when Floyd Mayweather fought him. You know that Floyd Mayweather almost got knocked out by DeMarcus Corley, right? Did you actually see that fight? I don't think you see that fight because you wouldn't be leaving this stupid comment if you seen that fight. Relax. All right. So getting back to what I was saying, Terrence Crawford, not the best crop of fighters, but it's not his fault. Now, in defense of Crawford, there's no way to really tell what Crawford would have done if he had fought Floyd or the fighters that Floyd fought at that time. Okay. Crawford is a southpaw. He's a switcher, but he's the better southpaw. Crawford might have beaten these fighters, but we'll never know. Chop Chop was very good. Castillo was very good. All these guys that I named before, very good. I don't know how those fights would have went if Crawford were to fight him. Unfortunately, Crawford didn't have the opportunity to fight the very, very best in the world until he got into 147, or which most people feel that are the best fighters in the world. It wasn't until 147. You know what I mean? And I think it's unfortunate, but a lot of people leading up to the Spence fight bashed Crawford's resume because he was not fighting those names. Spence was at 147 fighting guys like Kell Brook, who was recognized as one of the best fighters at 147, but he had he had the Sean Porter win. Sean Porter was proven. Keith Thurman was proven. All of those guys on 147 were proven, and they were at their prime fighting each other at one point. So that was the criticism that Bud fought. So when Bud was knocking everybody out at 135, right, outside of Ricky Burns, outside of Victor Postal, he knocked everybody else out. Not sure what would have happened if he fought Chop Chop or if he fought Zab Judah. You know what I mean? It's no way to really know anymore. There's no way to know. There's no way to know. So with that being said, it took a Spence fight for people to really recognize how good Crawford was. But Crawford was already that good prior to that. It's just that the names that he was fighting, they weren't that big yet. So he destroyed all those guys, but they didn't have the names that the guys that Floyd fight. Oscar De La Hoya, Miguel Cotto, all of those names, Canelo Alvarez, all of those names, the names have more of an impact. So yes, fighters could win championships in multiple divisions. Fighters can also become undisputed. All right. But the argument, at least on Floyd's sake, is who were the better fighters at the time that they fought? We will never know. But if we look at those names and look at the careers and what they did accomplish when Floyd fought them, they were extremely much more accomplished fighters. I think Manny Pacquiao fight happened too late, but at least if Bud had fought Manny Pacquiao and he had won, and maybe even stopping Manny Pacquiao, maybe we can make a more fair of an argument. But that fight never happened. There's no fight here that you can compare to Floyd and with Bud and Floyd in their resumes, because they're two completely different times. So Bud being accomplished by becoming undisputed twice, something that Floyd never did, it was just against a different crop of fighters. You know what I mean? So you could go either way with that. Again, there's no true wrong or right answer. What do you pick? Do you pick undisputed over quality opponents? Not saying that Crawford didn't fight quality fighters, because he did. And a lot of the criticism was unfair because those fighters were good. They just didn't have big names. But Floyd did fight the more accomplished fighters throughout his career. Without becoming undisputed and not unifying much, he still fought quality fighters, fought a lot of champions throughout his career. All right. So I want to just breeze through the styles really quick before I open this up and let you guys join in and give me your picks. Crawford, let me start with Crawford and his style. Extremely I mean, when I think of Crawford and Floyd, I think Crawford is the complete package. He's giving you, he's well-rounded in every area there is. He has the angles, he has the power, he's a great counter puncher. He can adjust to anybody style. He's shown that he can adjust to whatever way you're fighting. Whatever fight he's struggled in a little bit, in each fight that he struggled at all. Gamboa a little bit, he struggled a little bit there. I think early rounds against Kavaliauskas, he struggled a little bit there. There's other fights, I'm sure, but Crawford has proven that he can adjust to whatever his opponent is doing. Crawford has also shown us that he can take it to another gear. All right, we've seen that. I was talking about this recently when it came to Shakur Stevenson, and I haven't seen that from him yet. But with Crawford, I've seen him turn into a different gear. I've seen it when he fought David Avanesian, and the glove issue was there, and he didn't want it to continue because they were going to go through a period where they were going to switch the gloves. He went in there and knocked them out. Same thing with Sean Porter. When he was told that he was down, what did he do? He stopped Porter in the very next round. You know what I mean? Crawford has shown that he can either adjust or turn it up to a certain level where he's just going to stop you, but he can fight a very smart, strategic fight. In the Victor Postal fight, he fought a very smart, strategic fight throughout the entire fight. A lot of people didn't like that fight because at that time, Crawford was usually knocking everyone out, even though he dropped and hurt, Postal. In that fight, he didn't do enough to stop him. He didn't finish a job. It's not that I don't know why. It just wasn't a fight that he got the stoppage. But he's been able to stop just about almost everybody he's faced. He has the power advantage. He has the size advantage. I think he's proven as well. And I said this prior to the Spence fight in the breakdown that I did. People were underestimating Crawford's strength. People were focused too much on size. Size. When they were bringing up Spence is the 147 guy. He's bigger. People don't understand there's a difference between size, power, and strength. And Crawford shown that he can take guys that are really aggressive and that's known to use their size, like a Jeff Horn, and pick them up and move them exactly where he wants them to be. He showed that in the Spence fight. Spence didn't use his size on Crawford. He couldn't. Crawford is a physically strong fighter. And people actually underrate his size because Crawford is actually bigger than what people give him credit for. He's going to 154, and he's a decent size at the division. You know, it's not like there's a size gap like the way uh Kell Brook and Triple G. Remember that fight? You guys remember when they were promoting that fight and they had them standing side by side, face to face, and it looked like from the photos that they were big, or at least they were around the same size. They wasn't. They wasn't. You know, but they try to promote it as they were. No, Crawford is probably a good, he's not a big 154 pounder, because some of those guys can easily fight at midweight. But he's a sizable, he has the size to be able to handle himself at the division. Yes. No, we haven't seen it yet because his fight with Madrimov didn't happen yet. But just them facing off and being standing next to you, could tell that Crawford has the size to be able to handle himself at the division. You know, Crawford has also shown to have a good chin. There's times where he got hurt, got rocked with a good shot, and he showed good recovery. I actually think that when he fought Breedis Prescott, he probably should have just stayed at 140. Now, if he did that, then he wouldn't have accomplished becoming champion at 135, because he would have never fought Ricky Burns. So he did come down and he got the title. He got the lineal title. So it's a great accomplishment to have. But when he got hurt those couple of times by Gamboa, it probably because, yeah, he's at 135, and it's a guy that can probably fight at 140 or even 147 at the time. And he's cutting down to 135. Okay. So when it comes to Crawford, his ability to adjust, the ability to turn into a different gear, him being a phenomenal switcher, great angles, great counters, and just, you know, knowing how to control distance, knowing how to take the strengths of his opponent away from them. You know, the Felix Diaz fight is probably one of my favorite fights to look at, with Crawford against I think Diaz was one of the few like southpaws that he had fought. And the reason why I like going to that fight is because Diaz was such a good fighter leading up to that fight. I mean, you know, after that fight, he kind of just drifted off, but he was an Olympic gold medalist, and you know, he was a good fight. He did good against, I thought he beat Lamont Peterson when they fought. You know what I mean? He was a southpaw. I think he was good, but it was the way that Crawford just made sure that this guy wasn't getting in my space. When he knows how to move, use the ring, you know, and pivot around his opponents. Those are one of those fights where you saw that version of him. You saw it against Victor Postol as well. So I've seen different versions of Crawford, and I've also seen Crawford slug it out like he did against Eggy Kavalaskis. You know, those are fights where Crawford, you know, and I said this the other day with Boots when I made that video. Crawford in certain fights like to play with his food. You know, he likes to play around and, you know, keep you on the end of his jab at times and wait for the right shot like he did against David Avenesian. But there was fights like against Amir Khan. There was fights where he fought Eggy Kavalaskis, right? Where he kind of stepped, he was fighting really aggressive early on. You know what I mean? Very, very early on in the earlier rounds, you can tell like he set the pace on how this fight was going to go. And then when Eggy caught him with a good shot, because people say, what do people say? Crawford gets hit too much, you know? And this is what people said about Boots the other day. When Boots, you know, had that fight the other day and he was getting hit a lot. People were saying like, oh, Boots can't beat Crawford because he gets hit too much. You got to remember that when it came to Crawford had fights where he got hit a lot too, especially against Eggy Kavalaskis, and people were saying he gets hit too much. So it really depends on what Crawford. I think Crawford has good defense, very good defense. I don't think he's on a level as Floyd. I think Floyd is one of the greatest when it came to defense alone. But I think Crawford, very accurate, good defender, great fighter, and can switch not just stances, but his style, and can adjust to whatever his opponents is doing, he's gonna take away all their strengths and turn them into weaknesses. And I think he's not only the best fighter, the best talent I've seen since Floyd, in my opinion. I think he is. I think for sure he's probably the best American fighter since him. You could bring up Andre Ward. Andre Ward is also included in that discussion. But as far as American fighters, I think Crawford is the most complete package. Even against Ward, because at least with Crawford, I think he's a better KO artist, in my opinion. And I think he's more fun to watch. And I'm a big Ward fan. That's coming from a huge Ward fan. I'm a crazy big Ward fan, but I think Crawford is more easier on the eye because he's gonna give you that technical ability, but he's gonna try to knock you out at the same time. Floyd's style is different, and there's two versions. There's Money Man, there's Pretty Boy. Pretty Boy Floyd was a freak athlete. I think at the time, I think three of the most athletic fighters at the time was definitely Shane Mosley, Floyd Mayweather, and Roy Jones Jr. Of course, Roy Jones, you can't, Roy Jones is the GOAT when it came to being a freak athlete. You know what I mean? And having the power to go with it. Floyd Mayweather as a Pretty Boy Floyd, not a switcher or nothing like that, but Pretty Boy had good defense as well, but he used to turn it up. He used to try to knock everybody out. But yeah, he was so damn fast. He was so damn fast. He was so much faster than everybody he faced, but he also had that technical ability too. He had very good defense at the time. But what took away the defense was better later in his career. Why? Because he just wasn't trying to knock everybody out anymore. You know what I mean? Again, the injuries, the brittle hands, and all of that stuff that came later, it changed his style a little bit, especially because he was fighting bigger fighters up at 147 and 154. So it changed him a little bit. But Floyd Mayweather, I mean, again, defensive master, doesn't get enough credit for his offense. People like to say Floyd runs. He doesn't just run. He didn't run against Canelo. Why do people say that? No, he fought Canelo, walked him down, made him miss, and made him pay. Not like Shakur Stevenson is doing right now and all the criticism he's getting. Yes, great defender, but where's the counter? Floyd was landing the counters. He was making fighters pay, especially when he got hurt. Every single time he got hurt, he beat their ass in the remaining fights of their fights. Chop Chop Corley hurt Floyd Mayweather. Floyd destroyed him after that. All right, Zav Judah knocked him down unofficially, but he knocked him down. We all seen it. The glove touched the mat. All right, unofficially, but it's a fact. It's a knockdown. Zav hurt him. Dropped. Well, he didn't drop him. Well, he dropped him, but it was unofficial. But he also caught him with another good shot at some point in that fight. Shane Mosley hurt him worse than any other fighter ever did. Hurt him bad. Hurt him twice in the same round, second round. Almost knocked him out. Almost. But didn't get the job done. What happened after that? Floyd beat his ass for the remainder of the round and for the remainder of the fight. All right. The only time that I bet against Floyd was that fight, by the way. But yeah, Floyd Mayweather, Pretty Boy Floyd got hurt, more of a fighter, more of a knockout artist. We saw that against Diego Corrales, who was also at the time a pound for pound fighter. And this goes back to what I was saying before about the quality of the fighters that they fought at the lower divisions. Yeah, Crawford became lineal champion, and he later became undisputed twice. But Diego Corrales at the time was a top 5 pound for pound fighter. He was extremely dangerous. He's much bigger than Floyd Mayweather. And Floyd beat the hell out of him, dropped him like 5 times, stopped him, destroyed him, he made him look like he was nobody. And that's what Floyd did throughout his career, was made fighters look like they were ordinary. Great fighters. Great Hall of Fame fighters. Hall of Fame. Marquez, Canelo, Cotto. You know what I mean? These were top tier, all, generational greats that he made look ordinary. ordinary. And before these fights happened, a lot of people were like, people don't want people want to be dismissive now because of the outcome of the fight. But even like a fighter like Ricky Hatton, who got knocked out by Manny Pacquiao, all right, not much happened after Hatton lost to Floyd and Pacquiao. But at that time, that was a very big fight. A lot of people, a lot of fans. No, YouTube wasn't a big thing yet. I don't even know if YouTube was out yet. But at that time, if you were on the boxing threads online, in the earlier stages of social media, or if you had those conversations with other boxing fans, hardcore fans, you would know that Ricky Hatton at that time was one of the guys that people wanted to see Floyd face because they had similar records. All right. Ricky Hatton had a big name, and that's one of the names. It wasn't Margarito, it wasn't Paul Williams or any of the other names like that came up throughout Floyd's career that he didn't fight. But Hatton was one of the guys that fought, and people are forgetting that shit, because it's already happened and was easy, and he made it look easy. But at the time, people wanted a lot of these fights. People really wanted the Canelo fight. You know what I mean? There were certain fights there that happened, and it was a perfect time for it to happen. But when Floyd made them look regular, that's when people were like, "Oh, well, these guys are past it. They're all past it." But that's how it works when it comes to boxing. All right, but going back to Floyd, defensive genius, offensively doesn't give the credit for he deserves. All right, be able to make people miss and make them pay. It phenomenal counter puncher, one of the best ever. Counter punching abilities. Knowing how to control distance. Knowing how to basically do everything, do it all. And he had the chin to hold up, because if he didn't have the chin, he would have got knocked out by one of these guys, because a lot of these guys were bigger than him. He moved up 5 different weight classes, and became champions in all of those weight classes that he fought at by beating other champions. You know what I mean? So these are the strengths and the weaknesses of Floyd Mayweather. He had those strengths that Crawford had, but it was just different times. I think the earlier Floyd was more comparable to Crawford because he was trying to get the knockout, and he definitely pleased the fans in his earlier fight. I mean, he was fun to watch. Money May, not as fun to watch, but I enjoyed it just as much because of just seeing how brilliant from a technical standpoint he was, you know, just my opinion. All right. All right, I'm gonna open this up. You guys can join in. Again, keep it very respectful. Throw the link in the chat for you guys, for anyone that wants to join up and chat and give me their thoughts on the two. Well, as I keep speaking, all right, and I do want to start reading some of the comments as well and respond to some of these comments. All right, but yeah, I think this is so giving you my opinion on how the fight would go. Um, so I have to break it up, because when it comes to Floyd at 135, right? Let's say Pretty Boy. Pretty Boy, to me, looked like the better talent. Pretty Boy, and again, we are comparing 135 Crawford and all those guys he was fighting around that time against Pretty Boy Floyd, 130, 135 around that time. All right, and who he fought. Pretty Boy, to me, obviously fought the better fighters to me around that time. Pretty Boy was more action-packed, more willing to stop fighters, but he got hit a lot more. All right, still very accurate, still very good defensively, but he got hit and he got hurt a lot. And that comes to growth. That comes with growth. Those big shots that he took from Chop Chop, those big shots that he took from even Zab when he first moved to 147, those made him more of a complete fighter, in my opinion. But At 135, I think Floyd was probably, I would lean towards him and being the better talent. But I would also think that Crawford brought a lot more to the table, I think, by some of those guys that even hurt him, you know, even like an Emmanuel Augustus, right? Who gave top five, one of the most difficult fights of Floyd's career, right? Who's the top five in Floyd's career? Most difficult. Emmanuel Augustus, Castillo won. Uh Marcos Maidana won. I say those are the top three most difficult for Floyd. Augustus, I mean, you might want to say Zab because Zab probably won maybe three of the first four rounds, dropped Floyd. So you got to throw Zab in there. And probably Miguel Cotto. Yeah, Jorge, I see you. Miguel Cotto. I would say those are my five most difficult Floyd Mayweather fights. I think with Crawford, I would have to go with Gamboa. And damn, it's like Crawford beat everybody up so bad. Errol Spence actually ended up being one of his easier fights. I would have to go with is it Eggy Kavalaskas? Kavalaskas was one of his most difficult. Eggy Kavalaskas. Yeah, it gotta be Gamboa, man. Kavalaskas, Benavides Jr. was tough. Benavides Jose was tough. That was a tough fight. That was a tough fight for Crawford. He got the stoppage at the end, but at that time, that was the most, outside of Gamboa, obviously, that was the most I've ever seen Crawford struggle in a fight. Igor, thank you for the donation. Says, Wave, you got to go to LA for Crawford fight. Salute. I mean, I would like to, man. But I can't. I can't, man. I got things to do, man. I will be here, man. I just took a lot of vacation time from work as well. So I don't think I'm not going to be able to swing it, unfortunately. I did look at flights and stuff, but I'm not going to be able to cut it. All right. But I will be here covering a fight live. But yeah, I would say those three. I think those are the three where I've seen Bud struggle a little bit. Kavalaskas, hurt him, almost dropped him. He recovered well, but I mean, it's still a moment where Crawford was getting hit by big shots. Porter was difficult. Yeah, Porter. I would have Porter in a 5. Yeah, Porter was one of the tough fights too. But I don't think they're on a level of toughness as Floyd. I think Floyd had some seriously tough fights. I think those fights with Augustus, Cotto, Zab was very, very difficult. Also Styles. Crawford can switch, but Crawford is the better southpaw. The reason why I think Crawford has a great chance in beating Floyd Mayweather, old Floyd or new, or old or younger, is because of the southpaw. I would probably rate Crawford as a southpaw much more, and I'm talking about the time that Floyd faced him, not overall. I mean, Crawford obviously is better than all the other southpaws that Floyd fought. Floyd fought Pacquiao. I rate Crawford now over that version of Pacquiao. I rate Crawford over Victor Ortiz, southpaw. Floyd knocked him out, but it was a weird way of knocking him out. Zab and Chop Chop. I mean, those are the 4 that kind of come to mind. Chop Chop hurt him. Zab hurt him, dropped him. All right. Ortiz hurt him with a headbutt. Leaping frog headbutt. And then you had Manny Pacquiao, who had his moments, but still clear win for Floyd, in my opinion. Had his moments, but wasn't one of Floyd's most difficult fights, in my opinion. Wasn't an easy fight, but wasn't Floyd's most difficult. Um, I rate Crawford over those guys. So when we say, for the people that like to make the argument that Pretty Boy was definitely better, you got to remember that if Bud at 135, because remember, I don't believe that Bud was any less of a fighter at that time. I just don't think Bud had the exposure, and I don't think he had the names to really showcase his skills. But those same skills that you see today were there then when he had dreads. Those same skills and abilities were there. I think him being in the smaller divisions, I think he was a lot more quicker, a little bit more agile than he is at 147. But he still is the same fighter. I think he's strong at 147, and even though he was knocking guys out then, he's a stronger puncher. I think he's physically stronger. I think he's healthier at the weight, even though he's older. So I think when it comes to Bud Crawford, if he were to fight Floyd Mayweather, if he were to fight Pretty Boy, I think Crawford has the ability to catch Pretty Boy, because even though Pretty Boy was offensively dangerous, he also left himself open at times to get countered. Floyd, as amazing as his defense is, there are opportunities to counter him. Emmanuel Augustus showed that. DeMarcus Corley showed that. Zab definitely showed that. Zab in 4 rounds, and I know it's just 4 rounds, Zab Judah was able to outbox and continuously counter Floyd Mayweather. All right. And at times, even, make Floyd miss. Now, the problem is with Zab, and we all knew the Zab issue, and Zab is also one of my personal favorites because, he was just, I felt like, it's a New York bias thing. He's always been one of my favorites because he represented New York. Zab was a big fighter. He might not be that big to you guys, but Zab, those early rounds and a lot of the Zab Judah fights were good. Maybe except for Costa Zoo, but a lot of his fast rounds, even when he fought Cotto, Zab Judah was a problem in them early rounds. Zab was super fast, even faster than Floyd in those early rounds, countering Floyd, making him pay for his mistakes. Never really seen that, and I haven't seen much of that since that fight. But he is a southpaw. And even though I don't think Crawford is as quick as Zab, I think that Crawford is a guy that struggles early. He would have probably struggled early against Zab. And even though they never fought before, I think Crawford and what he's shown in his career would have stopped Zab late. You know what I mean? I think it would have happened because Crawford, just like Floyd did against Zab, will adjust to whatever you're doing well. Whatever you're doing, whatever your strengths are, again, he's going to take it away at some point. You're not going to continuously win the same way if you are having success with either one of them two. All right.
Josh Furball was done 97.
Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, Wave. I just wanted to jump on and just say respect to you, man. I definitely appreciate the channel. I definitely appreciate what you're doing for the sport, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that, man. Wait, what do you got there in the background, man? You in the garage?
Yeah, I'm in the garage.
Okay.
This is where I live. My wife put me out. So, yeah.
Oh,
It's
good
tough.
luck with
It's
that,
tough
man.
out
I just seen the car, so I thought I didn't know if you was working on a car or whatever, but
Well, no, I'm not working. I'm just out here sitting around in the garage and,
yeah.
the lady put me out, so now I gotta sleep out here, and it's tough. But I just wanted to pop up to just show you some love and just let you
Yeah.
know I definitely appreciate what you're doing, not
Thank you.
only
I
on the
appreciate
show,
that.
just for the sport in general.
Thank you.
I
Thank you. I appreciate that.
respect the grind for sure.
Who do you think wins? Who do you think was better?
In what fight?
Between Floyd, Prime and Prime, who do you think is better, Floyd or Terrence Crawford?
Whoa, fam, you can't do that. That's.
I mean, this is what the video is on. You see the
I
topic?
feel you. I get you. I get you, fam. But that we can't. I don't know. I have
Yeah.
no idea.
All right.
Honestly, I have so much respect for Bud. I have so much respect for Bud, and I have so much respect for Pretty Boy.
Mm-hmm.
But
This pig, man. Pig. This real to say a name. Just throw it out
Pretty
there.
Boy, Pretty
Pretty
Boy.
boy. All right.
Pretty
Thank you, man. Thank you for coming through, bro. I appreciate this support.
All right. And look, I don't know. I say that regretfully, to be honest
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah. No, it's cool. It's all about respect. I mean, I didn't even pick anyone yet.
Love y'all.
Right.
Y'all do your thing.
All right, thank you. Yeah. So the reason why I'm making a video like the way I'm trying to give you all angles. You know, I know you guys are arguing away in the comment section, which is great. But I'm trying to give you as many angles as I can, because I think if we're gonna actually break this fight down, right? You guys got to remember, we're in a YouTube time. We're in 2024. When we watched Floyd fight, right? When we watched his fights back then, we didn't have this. We didn't have this space where we can just discuss and break down fights. So when Floyd fought these guys like a Chop or Augustus and Zab, and when he struggled in these fights, if he were to be fighting a Crawford next, hypothetically, we would say, well, Crawford did this to all of these guys. Floyd had struggled against this southpaw. You know how we do today? We would have been doing that then. So even though right now it's very easy to just say, oh, it's Floyd easy, or it's Terrence Crawford easy, you guys got to remember they're in two completely different generations, and there's no common opponents there. So you got to remember that's my point. Two completely different times. What's up, nerd? What's good, bro? You on mute.
I'm good. How are you?
Good, man. Let me know what you think about this discussion.
I mean, I heard all the fights that you mentioned. Floyd having a little bit of trouble. The Chop Corley, that's one of, because he got hurt bad wave in that fight.
Yeah, he did.
But if you watch the sequence after that, in terms of how Corley followed up, it was kind of sloppy. To me, it almost seemed like he hit him by mistake, and he's like, "My bad, Floyd," and he was just hitting him. But if Crawford would have caught him that way, I don't know if Floyd survives. The question is, if Crawford hurts Mayweather early mid-round, not like McDonough hurt him once, and after that, Floyd was like, I ain't doing this again. Easy night. He made his fights easy nights after he started beat Mayweather, Money May.
Yeah.
So that's the question. Do you think Crawford, if he catches him early, like Shane Mosley, perfect example, caught him early, he couldn't finish him.
Yeah.
Does Crawford finish him? And you already know he finishes.
I think I would, if I had to pick between the two versions of Floyd and Crawford fighting one of them, I think Crawford has a better chance of beating Money May than beating the Pretty Boy version. Yeah, the Pretty Boy version.
But here's my argument to that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it before.
Okay.
Terrence Crawford is a very durable guy.
Mm-hmm.
Would Mayweather and his hands withstand a long night trying to put him out? Because it's either going to be one or the other. Either Terrence Crawford's going to do it to him, or Floyd. Pause. You know what I'm saying? And there's gonna be. I don't know if Floyd's hand could withstand a long night of trying to get somebody out of there and trying to hold Terrence Crawford back, because that dude goes in to get it done.
Yeah.
There's no playing around. You know what I'm saying? And so that's my. I would pick because of that.
Yeah.
Because of that, I would pick Crawford.
Yeah. No, I think you're making great points, and these are and I'm trying to draw as many points out there. Hypothetically, of course, if they were to fight each other, we don't know how the fight would go, but I do know that I personally believe that Crawford brings more to the table than all of those guys. I know I mentioned, and I have to do it because when I'm making this video, I have to bring up every point imaginable. You know what I mean? That I want to put out what the responses are before you guys even say it. You know what I mean? So yes, those names, legendary. Cotto, Canelo, all of those guys that I mentioned before, Marquez. Well, I'm sorry. When Floyd shut them down, and sometimes like what he did with Shane, he recovered. He caught him twice. Shane did it twice, though. So you got to give him credit because he did it twice.
Yeah. I was
maybe
betting
it's because he wasn't fully recovered from the first one.
Yeah.
But he did it twice. But after that, he didn't hit him again. And he embarrassed Shane Mosley, who was not in his prime, but he was still very, very good.
The thing with Mayweather is that you had an opportunity.
But hold on, let me finish.
Go ahead.
Let me finish this point. Crawford, on the other hand, he does the same thing that Floyd do when it comes to adjusting. So whatever Floyd is doing to win, you got to remember that Crawford is a computer as well. You're not going to just keep leading with the right hand and dunking underneath it. It's not going to work all night. So if you're doing that and it's working for you, it's not going to keep working, because now I'm going to adjust to that. Whatever way he does it, he might go into a shoulder roll defense, a Philly shell defense, or he might fight out of high guard just like Floyd do. Floyd do the same thing. They both do the same thing. So that's why it's so hard to call it.
Yeah.
But you brought a good point up with the brittle hands and stuff, especially with Money May, because it's like, damn, Crawford has shown that he's been durable. He could be durable. And if Money can't hurt him, you gotta have to deal with this guy all night. It's not like Maidana dealing with you all night, because Maidana is wailing all day. So it was tough. But it's different because Crawford is a lot more precise.
Yes.
It's like, damn, you're winning, and then like, bam, what happened? And that's what happened with Kell Brook. That's what happened with Benavidez at the end of the fight. It's like, damn, yo, you're doing all right, and then out of nowhere, you hit me with something that I didn't even see coming. And then he puts you, then the fight is over.
But there's the issue there with picking against Crawford in his unorthodox ways, because he can fight you one way and then he switches and then he decides. Is that there's just too many variables you have to consider with Crawford. And the only thing is I would say is that Mayweather wins on points. If they go to the scorecards, I just don't. Mayweather would win rounds on 2 punches. I don't know if Floyd would lose a 12-round decision. But that's why I say Terrence Crawford beats Floyd. If it came down to it, it's just Pretty Boy was pretty outstanding when he was doing his thing and knocking dudes out, but he's a hard pick.
Jeff, thank you for the donation, brother. He says, I think the southpaw issue that Floyd reportedly had coming up is real. See Chop and Zab. I think Floyd finds a way to beat Crawford, but it's razor then. Yeah, I think it could be one of those ones. First of all, and I meant to say this before. This is a video that I just randomly put up because I just saw the tweet. I didn't really think about this, but I did watch one video prior to me going live, and it was Shane Mosley. You guys might have seen this video. It's by the channel, great, phenomenal channel, The Art of Dialogue. He did an interview with Shane Mosley, and Shane went into big detail if they were to fight, and Shane, you know, Shane Mosley is a legend. He's been in there with Floyd, and he's pretty good when he goes into details about certain fights. And I was listening to it, and he was like, you know, he actually has Money Mayweather losing to Crawford, but he has Pretty Boy beating Crawford. All right, which is fair. But one thing I will have to say is that the fighters would have to bring the best out of each other if they were to fight. Crawford, in my opinion, I don't think he's actually been in a position where someone completely brought the best out of him yet. He has not. There's not one fight where I mean, obviously he's adjusted when he was down or he was getting clipped for a good shot. He's made adjustments. I mean, even I went to the Hank Lundy fight here in New York. Even Hank, like in the first round or two, was catching him with some good shots. But then he switched and then it was over.
But like you said before, he likes to play with his food.
Yeah. It's like, yo, when is he going to fight a fighter where he's like, yo, I can't, you're fighting the very person. And I think he went into the Spence fight like that.
And then realized
Spence he couldn't match anything.
It changed after he pushed him off.
Anything.
It changed after he pushed him off.
You know what? We were saying this before the fight. At least I was saying this before the fight. I said y'all gonna be surprised on how strong Bud was in that fight. And I believe that Bud is the harder puncher. I think Spence beats you with the amount of punishment he's putting. But that Mikey Garcia fight let me know right there that it's all about the volume of punches versus boom, one shot, you're out.
That was the most disappointing performance I felt for Errol Spence. He should have let everybody know that this dude don't belong in the ring with him, and he carried him for 12 rounds. In my opinion, he didn't need to prove any. He said he wanted to prove that he could box with Mikey Garcia because they said he couldn't box.
Yeah,
doesn't matter, yo. He ain't supposed to be in the ring with you. He could have knocked him out at any time.
If you watch the fight, there were like two of the later rounds. I can't remember which ones. Maybe like the 8th and 11th. There was 2 rounds in that fight that he was really putting it on Mikey, like really, really like hurting him.
Yeah.
And he just could not put him down. He couldn't put him down.
But think about that with Floyd, with Pretty Boy Floyd. What you even said it. Crawford is he's a durable and how strong he is. Could Pretty Boy stop somebody like that? Not in one punch.
Well, I'm not expecting. Listen, I think if any version of Floyd stops Crawford, it is Pretty Boy.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think he beats Crawford by stopping him. I don't think at 135. Okay. I'm not expecting a stoppage from Floyd, either version, even though Floyd was a monster at that time. I think that Floyd, and I know it's not on the same level. It's not. I'm not comparing the bigger win. Floyd's win against Diego Corrales is a way bigger win than what Crawford did to Breedis Prescott, but it's similar in the sense that Crawford, for a way bigger fighter, no one knew who he was yet. He moved up in weight to take this one fight last minute, and he just easily just beat him every round like it was nothing. He didn't beat him down, but he showed at that point that, like, yo, this is who I am. I'm the real deal. You know what I mean? And I just don't see that Crawford. I don't think there's any version of Floyd, Money or Pretty, that would stop Crawford. He can beat Crawford, but stop him?
But that's what gives Crawford that chance, because he's going out there to he's not going out there to win just rounds. He's going there to knock you out.
Yeah, and
he's done so in pretty much every fight that he's done.
But who do you think fought the better fighters?
Oh, come on.
Okay. I just want to be sure. Right? you know what? Because people take.
Yeah.
At a point, you know, everybody does content now, and everybody's like, well, you won this amount of divisions, championships, and when I say to that is, well, Adrian Broner got 4 division champion. He's a 4 division champion.
Mm-hmm.
So what? What? Like, Obviously, I can't do that. I mean, you can't do that.
But
But
he accomplished something.
it's,
But
it's the quality of
Yeah.
opponent. Who did you beat those 4 times you became champ?
and he beat Hall of Famers. Pretty boy Floyd beat Hall of Famers pretty much.
You know what's funny? Another thing too, when it comes to opportunities with Crawford, and I just don't think the timing of him to really display, like if he moved up to 140 while some of these other guys were still there, or if he had fought, like, let's say he fought, people don't know.
Durable
Him and
dudes like
Broner-
Lamont Peterson, yeah.
Broner and Crawford were both champions at 135 at the same time. Like, people don't know that, and Crawford at that time, Broner people were already hyping him up as a top 10 pound for pound
The
fighter.
next guy, yeah.
If Crawford had that opportunity then to fight Adrian Broner, he would have rose to superstardom years ago.
It was
10
business.
years ago.
It was business. Adrian Broner brought business.
Just never happened. Not blaming no one, but I'm just trying to tell people the difference. Like, Floyd fought better fighters, but the better fighters were there and the fights were made. Crawford just didn't. He did 135. Miguel Vasquez was another champion at 135 at that time. Good fighter. But
was it
like,
was it that promoters weren't willing to take the chance on Crawford to? Were they experiencing the same issues Aaron was complaining about?
Well, I mean, to be honest, people didn't know who Crawford was at that time like that. It took years, it took 140 to really know. People woke up with the Prescott. Like, okay, people began watching him at the Prescott fight. They started watching him there, but he was already knocking out everybody before that. But they're all regular dudes.
Yeah.
So again, it's just timing. Sometimes it's just not the right timing, for you to blow up. It really didn't happen until after he beat Spence. It took the Spence fight for people to understand. And you know what? If Spence didn't fight him, people would have been saying the same shit they were saying for 5 years.
Yeah.
So,
but thank you for the opportunity to get on the show, man.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Thank you, man.
I'm gonna school you in some pool.
Yo, yeah, I saw your message. I'll let you know if I'm gonna be around that week.
All right, bet.
All right.
Later.
But we'll link up.
All right.
All right. All right. What's up, guys? All right. So I don't know, man. It's tough to call. But like I said to you guys, Mayweather, phenomenal defense. But now you're fighting a technical beast. You're not fighting a guy that is just overwhelming you with punches. And I'm talking about Money May, overwhelming you with punches that's random and giving you a close fight. This is a guy that's going to bring the pressure, especially if you're winning. Because I think Floyd at some point, or maybe multiple points in their fight, if they were to ever fight, would be winning at some points in that fight. But whatever you're doing is just not going to last. And I think the same with Crawford. As far as him switching, though, I don't think Bud is going to be switching much if he were to fight Floyd. I don't think there's any room to try things out. He's clearly a better southpaw. There are certain fighters out there that you can barely tell the difference between them fighting southpaw or orthodox. You know what I mean? I think Boots is one of those guys, like, he constantly switches. You know what I mean? Even like on a lower level, like, I mean, even remember like a Leonard Bundu, when he fought Keith Thurman in Errol Spence, that guy constantly switched, and I couldn't even tell which, like, I don't know which style you're better at. Whereas Crawford, it was like, all right, I'm playing around when I start out as a righty, but I'm being serious when I go to a southpaw. Crawford rarely goes back orthodox once he starts fighting as southpaw. It's never the other way around. He's clearly a southpaw fighter that fights very, very well as an orthodox fighter, but he doesn't normally finish fighting as a righty. You know, at least at the highest level, he finishes as a southpaw. You know, and he's more likely to get touched. So Crawford is not going into a Floyd Mayweather fight in his prime and testing the waters. It's not going to happen. Just hypothetically, the amount of money is going to be on the line. It's going to be if they were to fight in their primes, whatever weight, 135 or 147. There is going to be the biggest fight. It's going to be the biggest fight in Crawford's career. Because at 135, he didn't fight anyone with a name like Floyd. And if they fought at 147, he ain't fight with a name like Floyd neither. You know? Again, I'm not expecting a knockout in the fight. What I will say is that if Crawford is able to hurt Floyd, it would be much more difficult to recover because Crawford is a very good finisher. I don't think that even if Crawford is to lose that fight, if Crawford is to hurt him like Shane did, I don't think Floyd just takes over and beat him up for the rest of the round. You guys hear what I'm saying? Like, I don't know who wins the fight, but what we're used to seeing from both, I don't think it will go the same way we normally see. I think if Floyd were to win the fight, I think we would have to see Crawford in a space in a little bit more trouble than what we would normally see him in. And I think that goes the same for Floyd. I think if Floyd is struggling a little bit in a fight, you know how he normally just finds a way to turn it around. I think it would take more than that. You know, damn, there was a fight recently, and I don't know who it was with. I'm thinking maybe a fight within the last year. I remember calling it. There was a fight, and obviously whoever I'm thinking of, obviously they're not on the level of Floyd and Bud. But what I will say is that it's very rare to see multiple adjustments being made in the fight. And those two can do that. I just don't think one way works against either one. Whatever they decide to do. They're too unorthodox for me. You know, I mean, you know, Floyd is a lot more textbook. I think Crawford it could do a little bit more. Floyd is a master at what he does great, and that could be either a strength or a weakness. You know, again, I don't know, man. It's a very, very tough call in my opinion. You know, but if I had to pick, again, I think I'm leaning a little bit towards Floyd, Pretty Boy Floyd beating Crawford. I just think as good as Crawford looked as a guy at 135, I just think that he just didn't have the experience. And I think Floyd, jumping from those fighters he fought, Ricky Burns, Breedis Prescott, Yurkis Gamboa, I just think there's a major gap in talent between those guys and Floyd. It's just way too many levels. And I think Gamboa is definitely the best talent, you know, and even Gamboa was just slipping out of his prime at that time. But he was also much smaller than Crawford. You know what I mean? But he never had a good chin against anybody. But I'm leaning towards Floyd because Floyd was in trouble and had fought some really, really good fighters. And I think Crawford would beat them as well. But I don't know. I'm only comparing what we saw versus what we saw. Like, and when it came to Crawford at the earlier ages or early stages of his career, Floyd accomplished too much for me to lean towards Bud. Even though I think what I see with my eyes, it looked like Bud can deal with any version of Floyd. But I would lean towards Floyd if they were to fight. Now, when it comes to Money May, mm, I think that fight, would be something like Floyd edging the fight with the skin of his teeth, maybe majority or split. I think his defense is what wins him the fight, because that's what it's really about. It's Bud's superior power against Floyd's superior defense. And I think Floyd is going to have to deal with a lot in that fight, which is going to lead to them possibly rematching after. But I don't know. I can't say that Crawford beats him. You know, I think I would still barely lean towards Floyd if they were to fight. And I'm talking about, like, look, they're both there. They're both in their 30s at welterweight. All right. This is Money May I'm talking about, not Pretty Boy. Money May against Crawford. Both at 147. I think Crawford would probably beat a lot of those guys that Floyd fought in better fashion. But it doesn't necessarily mean that he beats Floyd. I'm going to lean towards the superior defense in Floyd by the skin of his teeth. I'm not expecting any knockouts from either side, by the way. All right. If we were to get a knockout, I would expect Bud to knock out Floyd. But I'm not expecting a knockout. Any version of Floyd, Pretty or Money. I see you guys' comments. All right. If Leonard is in the mix, Sugar Ray Leonard, I'm not gonna go crazy here. But this is another question that was asked on that same video that I watched with Shane Mosley earlier. If Sugar Ray Leonard is in the mix, I don't think Sugar Ray is as unorthodox as Crawford is right now. But Sugar Ray has power. He has speed. Again, it's one of those things where Floyd's defense would be a problem for Sugar Ray Leonard. But it's like one of those situations where if Ray catches you with a good shot, man, it's not going to be like when Shane caught him with a good shot or Zab. It's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be hard to really survive. What Ray did to Hearns in that first fight, like, I wish I would have saw that fight live, because even watching it, like the first time I watched the full fight, it was still surprising at that point because Hearn was clearly winning the fight. All right. When it comes to Ray and Crawford, again, I think Crawford and both Floyd can be in the mix with the Four Kings. You know, I mean, minus Hagler, because Hagler was a middleweight, but I really don't know. I think just like comparing Floyd and Crawford, I don't know if there's a definite answer. Like, people like to say the older guys right away out of respect. But I don't look at it like that way. You know, I look at it just like I look at when I'm comparing fighters of today. And I just think that certain versions of those fighters are more difficult for each one of them. You know what I mean? I think Hearns, for example, I've always said this, and you guys have probably heard this on my channel. Hearns is the most difficult fight for Floyd Mayweather, in my opinion. The most difficult. It's just, I don't even think Hearns' style is good for Floyd. I just don't think it's a good style for him. I think Floyd, I've always said that, I think if Floyd loses to anyone, he loses to Hearns. Hearns is tall. He's super rangy. He has the long arms, and he's freaking powerful too. Those guys in the Four Kings, they're all powerful. You know, Hagler, obviously, he's a middleweight. He was a switcher. He had a lot of power too. Hearns is just long and rangy, and he hits hard, bro. I just don't think that's a good style for Floyd. Floyd would have been forced money, and I'm talking about money or pretty boy. I don't think that's a good style for Floyd Mayweather. I think if Floyd was most likely to get knocked out by anybody ever and around those weight classes, it's Tommy Hearns. And I know Tommy lost. It doesn't beat everybody. You know what I mean? I know he lost to Hagler. I know he lost to Ray, but I just don't like that fight for Floyd. I never liked that fight for Floyd. I think Floyd has a better chance of beating Duran and Hearns than, Duran and Ray than Hearns. Hearns is just all wrong for Floyd. I don't like that fight. He loses that fight. I'll put money on. I've been wrong before plenty of times, but I'm taking Hearns. I think that's the worst style out of everybody, you know, and I think Crawford would actually do better against Hearns, you know, because Crawford, again, he's a little taller than Floyd, a little bigger. He has very long arms too, you know, and his ability to adjust. But I think it would give him some success in that fight with Hearns. You know, but again, Hearns hits like a mule. Same thing with Duran, and I'm not trying to downplay Duran at all, because at Duran at 135 is either Floyd is either at 135. If he fights Duran, Floyd is either winning on points or he's getting knocked out. You know, because those pressure fighters that Floyd fought wasn't on the level as Duran. At 135, like 135, it's just different. Same thing with Crawford. Like, who can I say at 135 that Crawford or his career? I can't. There's no one that's on Crawford's resume that is even anywhere in the same sentence you could put in the same sentence as Roberto Duran. You know what I mean? So you're going to learn a lot about Crawford in a fight like that, because he hasn't fought a pressure fighter on that level. So he could do things like, yeah, we seen Duran lose to Ray, you know, and I'm talking about 135. He lost to Ray in a rematch and made him quit because Ray used his legs and stuff, and Floyd can do that. And so does Crawford. He can do that as well. But again, it really depends on what these kind of fights these guys are going to fight. It really depends. You know, if Crawford goes in there and tries to fight where he's trying to knock him out and comes in overly aggressive, he's getting knocked out, man. But I can see him fighting a fight with intelligence, like Ray did in their rematch, and him beating him, if not stopping him. So, you know, I don't know. You know, I don't know. I think all of the fights are difficult, and we'll never see them. You know what I mean? But you gotta understand, there are fights. Big Dog says, when does Bud do that? Bud has been overly aggressive in early fights, early in the fights. You know, I brought that up earlier. We talked about that already. Bud has fights where he's coming out very aggressive, like he did against Khan, like he did against what's this guy named? Eggy Kavalaskas. He's taking some heavy shots against Eggy, unnecessary shots. You're going to sit here and tell me that the fight he had against Eggy is like the fight he had with Postal or Felix Diaz? Absolutely not. Crawford is using the ring against Felix Diaz and Victor Postal. He's maintaining distance from the early rounds. You know what I mean? Yeah, did you see the Jose Benavidez fight? Did you see how many counters he got caught? with Crawford gets hit. There are sites where he doesn't get hit that much, but he gets hit. You think that Duran can't hit him? You know, like he's good, very good defender, but let's not get crazy. You know. All right. All right, man. I think I'm done, man. It was a great video, man. Please subscribe to the channel. You know, hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Thank you for, you know, the couple people that joined up, you know, and gave me their thoughts. And yeah, man. I think I cleared every point I could about those two. Right. But I'll be reading the comments and all that. Thank you guys for donating as well. You know, it's a long video. You know, I made a whole lot of points in an hour and a half. So I try to be fair. You know, I brought up their resumes. I brought up what they did in each division. You know, I brought up their styles. You know, I brought up what their strengths and weaknesses are, you know, and it was very easier for for me to discuss Floyd because Floyd had a way better resume, and there was fights that I can go back on and pick apart where he struggled in or got hurt in because it's so many more fights. But I think Crawford at this stage in his career, being a undisputed fighter, multi-division undisputed fighter, I think it's fair at this point to compare the two, you know, especially because he's a generational great. At this point, it's clear. All right. But anyway, hope you enjoyed the content, man. I'll see you guys on the next one. Have a good night. Peace.